Well, come on in, folks. We'll get started here. Good afternoon. This is the 40th CALLERLAB Convention in Cary, North Carolina. This is the 25th, I believe, still. And this session is called Vocal Techniques, or what was it officially on the Utilizing Voice. So that's what we're going to be discussing here. And your panelists today will be Mr. Tony Oxendine and Deborah Carroll-Jones. Let's give them a nice hand. My name is Tim Marriner, and I'll be the moderator. Like any of these sessions we have, this is being recorded, and if you have a question, please come up to the microphone. We have a wireless here that we'll pass around, and we'll be glad to work with you with those. But state your name, where you're from, and then ask your statement or your question or provide your input however way you need. So I guess I'll just kind of start with a few things, and then we'll just pass it on. Last year, or we'll give you a little history, back up when we had Arden Hopkins here, he provided a wealth of information vocally to our entire organization for many years. And when he retired, those shoes were going to be really difficult to fill. And so the collar coaches have kind of stepped in and tried to help out with doing just that. And last year was our first year in Nashville where we did not have Arden. But we had a topic that was on voice, and we had to cover everything Arden used to do in the last 20 years in one session. When we going back and decided, well, you know, that's probably not the best format. We should probably divide the topics up, and we'd have multiple voice sessions. So utilizing voice was one of those the three main pillars when we start talking about voice. We talk about maintenance, we talk about the structure, how it works, and then we talked about the technique. And those three things are the things that we pretty much focus on when we discuss voice. There is another session here, it's later, where they're going to be discussing the techniques and, the mechanics and the maintenance of the voice. That's a separate session. This session was separate because there was a lot of interest in it, and they wanted to hear. We got critiques, and the critique sheets said, let's hear more about this. So that's why it's kind of focused now, the attention on what we do vocally that can help or assist us while we're calling our dances. Pardon me. So we have some others coming in. Grab a sheet, and we'll keep you up to speed here. These terms that are on this handout that you're seeing here in front of you, that you have now, were a collection of a bunch of terms that we've heard for many years, but maybe not put collectively on one paper so that you can actually focus your attention on what you're doing. For many years, a lot of us, I can't tell you what I do, I just do it. You know, I don't know what it is that I'm actually doing or what it might be called. And so by having a collection of this terminology together in one page or one handout, you might be able to go through and see, hey, is there anything on this that I can do or utilize that might assist me in helping the show side of what we do? And when we're talking about vocal techniques, we're not just talking about singing calls. We're also talking about, in our industry, the patter side of it too, and how we can utilize the voice to enhance our delivery. So, you can grab one right there too. Perfect. All right. They're alphabetized. Let's put it that way. They're in alphabetical order even. So if you take a look at them and rip through the sheet, and if we just walked away, you might have a whole lot of questions. And so it's a matter of going down and looking at something and treating and discussing a few of them as we go. We have, the first one is a cappella. And that means by being able to deliver your information without music, by taking the sound down and continually calling. Now what's fascinating is, if you don't sing rhythmically, then the dancers can't keep dancing. They're dancing to the music, but as soon as you turn the music down, if you don't have a rhythmic delivery, they can't dance. It'd be like you just singing the phone book, 8375409. That'd be a good song, wouldn't it? But it's the idea of if you're just out there belting calls, saying, square through, right and left through, veer left, Ferris wheel, double pass through. Okay? There is no rhythm in that delivery. So you have to create a way for that to happen if you're going to use that technique at all. And one of the things we do in our school is, in order for anybody to realize that they're doing that, is just cut the music off while they're calling. And if that's what they sound like, a drill sergeant, then there's not a lot of dance that can be done with that. So musically, vocally, we have to create this chant, this rhythmic feel of how to keep them moving. And on occasion, laptops will crash. It's not if, it's when they do. And it can happen at CALLERLAB convention after parties, as we now know. But the idea is that, what do you do in that event? Do you keep calling? Can you keep calling? And if you want to be really professional, you keep the show going. And if that crapped out on a singing call while you're going at it, if it shuts down while you're doing a singing call, finish the rest of the singing call. If you can reboot it and kind of bleed the music back up to it. In the old days, we just put the needle somewhere in the middle, because I think I'm in the middle break now. And you'd be close. Then you try to pick up where it left off and keep dancing, keep them moving. And you'll have a lot of people comment. They think, you did that on purpose. No, Windows did that for me. So, you guys, you want to jump in on anything? You're doing great. Oh, yeah, great. So now, there's the other things down here. We just look at them. One says accent, having a particular note or phrase, stressing it, italicizing something with your voice, vocally being able to push or something to focus their attention, kind of like highlighter. If you're doing a singing call and there's a certain phrase in there that you really want to emphasize, like "I'm so excited," well, you want to sound excited in your voice, and you want to stress that and then give it that accent, you know. And if it's "I'm so excited," well, I'm so excited. You want to stress that by accenting it. And it's also attacking the first note or anything like that.
Well, and also accents can mean trying to mimic the flow and musicality of a different language when it comes to using it to speak English. If you don't do those really well, don't do them at all. There's a club in Texas that likes for me to come in every March and do their St. Patty's Day dance, because I can do an Irish accent. And they like to hear it. Now, I don't call the whole dance in that accent, because no one would understand me. But I do put it in a little bit for a few things. I like to use a Spanish accent if I'm doing a particular singing call, like Hernando's Hideaway. And we are going to dance like this. So I will do a little bit of that. But if accents are not your thing, leave them alone. Better no accent than one done badly. So that was my take on the word accent. I think it can be either one.
Yep. dialects, accents, all the same way. There, one of the ideas Arden always honed in on was your posture, and to be able to have your instrument sound proper, you have to stand properly and be able to project. And your body language is another item that does affect your calling. If you're up there very lazy with a hand in a pocket, or you're leaning against a railing, or just acting like you don't want to be there, or you're behind a computer reading it, or you can name all these things, like you're just kind of looking around, or you're focused your attention on one square. That body language there tells the floor you're not really talking to everybody. You're just kind of singing to yourself. I've seen people who literally turn around and sing to the walls. Yeah, it's like, well, where's your audience? And there's a difference when you practice at home and when you're delivering it on stage. You know, at home, you might be staring at the walls and go, oh, beige, we should paint the ceiling beige while we're at it, and singing along. But on stage, you have that delivery thing where you need to have some more stage appearance, and the body language really is, if you're uptight or nervous, these are little things that you can maybe enhance for some showmanship techniques, but you can sound it vocally too. You know, whereas the opposite idea, if the song is I'm so excited, and everybody's doing this now, I'm so excited, you know, I can't hide it. Yeah, Alabama in the corner, promenade home, right? So there are things that you can do that way.
I also like to see a caller that will move away from the table. I don't like my tables like these are right now. I hate calling on a stage that has the tables in front of me like this, because it cuts off half of my expression. Because I want to be out moving around, and I want to move away from my table. And that puts me in closer contact with the dancers, as opposed to standing behind here or needing to be at the computer all the time. So I encourage you to step out a little bit, step out in front.
One of the tricks is you want to apply as many of these things as you can so that you don't overwork your voice. You know, we have all of this equipment. Anytime that you're standing up, if you're looking down to read the computer, like I see so many people do, we didn't have that problem when we had records. You remember that? You were forced to learn the lyrics, and you didn't see many callers having to rely on the lyrics for singing call. Now, because it's so easy, and the problem is when you're turning down this way, like Tim spoke, when you're talking about posture, you know, if you're hunched over, your head's leaning down, you lose so much of your range. In order to hit the same notes that you would normally hit easily, you find yourself hurting yourself to hit them. I spoke with a guy yesterday, last night, and he was hoarse. I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, I had a dance last night with Greg." And I said, "Well, hell, you sure wouldn't want to be in my line of business if one dance did that to you. How would you like to do, 50 dances in 50 days, and do 3 sessions on Saturday and 2 on Sunday, or be like some of these guys down in the RV parks that work, 3-4 sessions a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week. If you're getting hoarse at a dance, you're doing something wrong. And one of the easiest fixes for everything is to properly stand up, get your head back, your shoulders back, your chest out. That's the easiest thing of all the things you can do to correct vocal problems. That's one of the easiest. So be careful where you put your stuff. I notice a lot of callers now, or a lot of roundhouse leaders too, are putting little things above their amplifier to put your computer on to make it easier for you to read the lyrics. My suggestion is learn the lyrics. And, the computer's just sitting there. I start it, and I try not to use it the rest of the evening because, as Deborah said, my job is to speak to you guys. If I'm speaking over here, it's kind of like trying to do one of these things here. If I come up and I read, and Tim did a great job with this vocal techniques sheet, and if he sat here and just said, "All right, guys, now a cappella is singing without any form of instrumental accompaniment. Accent, in addition to being Spanish, is giving a particular note. Do you guys get anything out of it? You know, yeah, you might get the gist of it, but hell, you can read it. You want to see the people up here be involved with you at the same time. We should be looking at you. Same was true with your square dance audience. You need to be put your equipment and everything in a position that will allow you to relate to them. And it will allow you to relate to them and let them see you standing as tall as you possibly can stand. Okay?
Yeah, another thing is, let's look at the treatment of singing calls. And how many of y'all have been watching and used to or maybe watched the American Idol shows or the X Factors or any of those where they have judges and they sit there and sing and then somebody comes back with a critique? And one of the shows, Simon made a comment. He says, you know, it just sounded like you were just singing karaoke to me. And everybody in the audience was really jazzed at the performance, and they were hooting and hollering. But his comment was, yeah, it was sung note for note perfect, but it just sounded like karaoke to me. And, of course, they booed Simon. But when I was listening to that, that was the first thing I said was, where's the heart? I don't get the feel of what they're singing there. It sounded pretty, and the music was rhythmic, and everybody was, you know, jumping out of their seats and having a good time because it was a good song. It was sung without heart, without the feeling. And sometimes you have to analyze these singing calls and try to connect with, what am I going to feel with this song? What is it that the use or the purpose for that song? And the same thing holds true with pattern calls too.
If you don't feel something with every singing call on your list, get rid of it. Because if it doesn't mean something to you, you can't sell it to the other people. And as far as a vocal utilization or techniques for putting emotion into your voice, some people are not comfortable doing that. There are specific vocal things that you can do to put emotion into your voice, even if you're just a little bit shy and putting a whole bunch of heart into it feels like you're standing out there naked in front of the crowd. There are several sounds in our English language that are actually consonants. We sing on the vowel, but there are consonants that need sound in order to be said, like M. We have sound, okay? V, the V. L, L. Now, tell me which one means more to you, the word love or the word love? Now, I didn't put any more heart into the second word. I lingered on the L. I faded just a little bit, got a little breathy with the vowel, and then the semivowel, the V, I accented it. Love. That has more emotion in it. Look at him. For the tape, Tony is making googly eyes at me up here.
Yeah. John's in the room.
But those are things you can do to put, and especially if English is not your first language, those kind of techniques can help you to sell a song where the English may be a little difficult for you, but by knowing where to put that emphasis, you can sell it much better.
And matching the feel of the emotion, as Deborah said, to the music is really important. Otherwise, you have a disconnect. And so you have a patter records come in all various types and arrangements and forms and instrumentations. And we know that we have patter music that works really well for workshops. We have patter music that works really well for beginners. We have patter records that work really well for festival events or drivers and things that really are way out there. And the matter of is trying to now match the music with the tone of the event that you're doing. Now, this isn't a music session, but it vocally now you need to match your vocals with the emotion of the music. And this is utilizing voice. So we're saying that if you're looking for contrast, do the exact opposite. If you're looking for ways to enhance it, then get the feel of the emotion of that singing call. I ask people on occasion, Well, what's the purpose of that record? Just to play it? No, you got to have some. What's it do? And he says, keeps me. I don't know. Just I like it. Well, why do you like it? Where's your connection to it? And if it's a singing call, it's what's the story that they're telling in the song? A lot of people don't know the story behind any that they're singing. They just sing the words, and they'll read them right off their laptop or wherever it is that they've got a cue sheet. And if you don't have the emotion behind it, then you've not really fully utilized the music and voice enhancement of it.
One of my gripes with today's callers is that we call, and I'm speaking in terms of patter, we call the same way to skillet licking that we do to some of the more contemporary, for whatever, they use alternative music now, but the more contemporary, the vocal styling, you vocally, you need to call based on the music that you're using. You know, Ringo Bingo, Sixpenny High, and Little Pig, Little Pig, that fits really good with skillet licking and Thunderbird Romp and a lot of the older, more traditional type patter records. A lot of the new music that we're using now doesn't lend itself vocally for that. And so you need to listen in the way you present your patter. Every patter tip, if you change music, vocally it should sound different. Too many callers, their singing calls are great, and they change the way they do their singing calls. They got drivers and slow ones and ballads and yada da da, and all the singing calls are different. But the patter, even though the music changes, the way we vocalize our calls to that stays the same. And vocally, your voice needs to follow the music of the patter record. Is that if it goes up, your vocally has got to come up. I'm on the other side of the fence with other caller coaches nowadays. I'm not a huge believer in chanting the calls anymore. I think there are instances where it's appropriate. I think skillet licking. I think those type, and I have some of those types of patter records. The old tradition, I don't want to get rid of them. I like them. But I think a lot of the newer, more contemporary stuff doesn't lend itself towards that manner of calling. So to me, it's very conflicting to hear a guy or girl use 1970s style of patter calling with 2013 kind of music. To me, there's a conflict there, and it adds something when you can do both. I'm not saying you should not do one or the other. If you're able to do both, then use that. That's one of the things we can sell vocally in the patter, not just the singing call.
So we're talking about also, if you flip over to the second page of it here, where it says descriptive words and emotional expression, the art of telling a story with your vocals, to have that connection, the feel of authenticity, some sort of reflection or image that you have in mind when you're singing those particular songs. And if it's a love song, have that image. If it is a jazz song, then have that laid-back jazz feel effect to your vocals. If you don't have that, it is acquired ability. You can listen to jazz music and have some of these jazz vocalists and try to mimic their style, so to speak. And if you can effectively do that with a song like Accentuate the Positive and have a nice little jazz feel to it while you're doing it, and you can apply some vocal techniques, you're going to really enhance that performance for that particular piece of music. There's other things that you can do. We talked about even facial expressions. If it's a happy song, smile. Okay? And if it's a sad song, well, kind of, sing it in a sad way. to connect that emotion. If
Yeah.
it's a crying song, then
Cry.
you can cry a little.
Cry, yeah, oh
While
yeah.
yeah.
Flutter wheel. Just put it in there. It sells it. On the second page there, Tim, you had something on your list that I think is so important, and I want everybody to look at it. It's the second from the top on the second page, and it's called Catch Breath. There are so many times with our patter and or singing calls that we are not breathing often enough. And I hear callers begin to get raspy and hoarse, or I hear them go sour because they don't have the air to support the tone. And this was something I learned. I paid a lot of money to learn that phrase from my voice teacher. And he would explain to me that I don't have to take a great big huge breath every time. Just a little inhalation of air can make all the difference in the world to get you over that vocal rise and fall so that you don't end up veering off the road into a sour note. So catch breaths are very important. And if you don't know where to breathe, if you haven't been able to figure it out, take it to a voice teacher or take it to one of the caller coaches and say, I don't know where to get a catch breath in this piece of music, and we'll show you where.
It's like topping off your tank because you got a long phrase to sing next. And if you don't get that catch breath, then what happens along the way is that you wind up straining to try to push air, and there isn't any more there. You run out of air, and so you strain that voice because you're out here like this trying to get the last word out without anything, without the wind, without the air going across the vocal folds to give it the vibration to make a sound.
Tim, do you do fisherman's luck?
That's one I don't do.
Tony, do you do fisherman's luck? All right, does anyone out there do fisherman's luck? Okay, Dawn, a few people out there do. Do you have a facial expression at the end of fisherman's luck? Like he just smelled a bad fish, Tony, is his facial expression up here. I do. If I do fisherman's luck, and I don't do it very often, when I finish with that thing, I go, and the crowd goes crazy because I have just sold them on the fact that I just worked my tail off for you people, and you had better appreciate it, and they go nuts.
And for the tape, she was panting for the recording.
Oh, yes, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
she-
For the
she
recorder, I was
panting.
leaning over
Yeah.
and panting frantically because I was totally out of air.
Tony was watching again.
Go ahead.
And there's some other songs that you have some challenges on, but there's styles like The Fisherman's Luck. It's a Sin to Tell a Lie is another one, where if you want to get all the melodies and the counter melodies in, then you wind up singing, well, cross my heart, I hope to die, will I never tell a white lie, tickly dolly out of the fish date last night. Mr. her Phyllis Diddle will look just right. and okay, but you can use some of that for some showmanship techniques. Let's say in the middle break you want to do that, and you give the appearance that you're totally out of air, and you're gasping to get through. Well, the last time through on number 7, you do it without a hitch, and they're going, wow, he did that with one breath. Needless to say, they don't know where we're getting our catch breath from, where we're doing our little quick circle breathing as we dance, as we call. Just enough to top her up to get through that phrase. And I think there's other songs. Anybody know what others that... Oh, sure, there it is. The Auctioneer was delivered. So you're right, Cowboy can be that way. And there's a one called Sold that's similar to The Auctioneer. And the phrasing goes on, and it just like, and there's a lot of lyrics involved in it. So, yep. Live, Laugh, Love is a lot that you can, and you can kind of pick and choose singing calls to make that with. You look like you're going to say something.
I'm looking I'm looking at this paper here where it says head voice, and it says also known as the head register. A singer uses the upper portion of their vocal mass to sing higher pitches with sounds resonating from the face. Most men do not have a head voice. They have a falsetto. Women have the head voice register. And that's to go from the speaking voice into the higher. So I just wanted to state that. you had something in here on belting. Where did you have that?
Under belting.
Under belting. Okay. See, we went so fast. All right. Belting. Oh, I see it. Okay. And excuse me, but what is this beatboxing thing?
Beatbox is this. That's beatboxing.
I can guarantee you I will never beatbox.
Oh, come on now.
I just think that's something I wouldn't be able to do, maybe with a ton of practice. But, okay, I just wanted to do that.
That's beatboxing. And it's a gimmick. It's a thing, the showmanship thing that you could put in with anything that has some sort of a rap feel to it, whether it's Pink Cadillac or Skillet Lickin'. Yeah, any of those.
Skillet Lickin'. Yeah. The belting idea, most of the time when we're singing for square dance calling, we're using our voice in our speaking register. Women, if you're trying to do singing calls in the head voice, stop it and get some help and learn how to sing an octave lower in your chest voice. It will make it much more pleasant for the dancers, and you will get booked more often. I can attest to that. But belting is taking a song and pushing that chest voice to its absolute maximum without breaking it, without flipping into your head voice. There are good belters, and then there are bad belters. Belting can be very vocally abusive if you don't know what you're doing. There are a lot of singers that are belters. One of the most famous belters is Reba McEntire. And she has paid the price for her vocal belting, with blisters on her vocal folds and having to take some time to care for the voice. Another one who is a great belter is Adele. Fabulous belter. What just happened to her? A vocal hemorrhage. So if you're belting, if you've got one of those singing calls that you want to really push that chest voice, save it until later in the evening. Don't make it your first one out of the gate, because your voice will be warmer. Your vocal folds will be a little bit more supple. Make sure you've had lots of water, and make sure you know how to support the voice. The mechanics of how to breathe and how to adjust the abdominal girdle to support that voice if you want to belt, because you're treading on thin ice if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, and one of the sad side effects, did I say that right? The sad side effects, if you have poor sound in a room, we as callers know that the dancers can't dance it if they can't hear it. And if you go into a room that's not sounded properly, the first thing we want to do is we overemphasize our diction, and we tend to belt so that the words can be heard. And we probably should reduce the amount of patter chatter that we use in our calls so that all the calls are being heard and not all the Humpty Dumpty and all the other stuff in the middle that's being done or said. You can eliminate that, strip call it, and just call the calls, shoot the calls out so they can dance it. You could still try to do it in some rhythmic tone, but or in some rhythmic chant, but the idea here is that they have to hear the calls. If it's a bad sound room, we tend to belt. And unfortunately, after a long weekend, that has a whole lot of damage on our vocals.
On a different, I was just looking around trying to see the number of callers in here that I have either called with or heard call or anything. The biggest problem I see with callers is proper breathing. We run out of air, and we're trying to sing as we run out of air, which is just terrible on your voice. I asked a guy the other day, I can't tell you who, and I said, how do you lubricate your vocal folds? He said, water. And I said, well, no, you kind of choke if you did that, because your vocal folds are lubricated with air. And as we get to the end, when we start running out of air, then what happens is the vocal folds keep getting closer and closer. If you don't have enough air going through, they start rubbing each other. When they rub one another, that's when you get blisters and nodules. So without a proper supply of air going through your vocal folds, you're gonna have vocal problems at some point. Singing calls are really easy if you listen to it, because the singing call tells you when to breathe. There's usually time, almost all the time, there's time for a breath at the end of each phrase. Patter, you can breathe whenever you want to. Have you ever noticed that you very seldom get hoarse talking, but you get hoarse singing? Because when we speak, we can breathe anytime. You know, I can pause. There's nothing that says I have to stop here and not talk and then take a breath. When we sing, there's structure then. When we speak, there's no structure. In the singing calls and in songs, there's structure that you have to do. If you have a long phrase, then you've got to sing through the entire phrase. You're not going to be able to breathe. So fortunately, our singing calls, like I said, are designed in a way that generally there's room to breathe at the end of every phrase. Now, sometimes you may have to go through 16 bars, but generally it's just 8 bars. I like to start, when I first start my singing call, I like to start with a full tank of air. I equate it to if you were driving your car and you had a full tank of gas and you had a little monkey on the back, that every time you drove 10 miles, he put a gallon of gas or a half a gallon of gas in your car. You would never run out of gas. And all you would do is just top off your tank, which is what Deborah mentioned a while ago. You have to learn how to top off your tank. But in order to top off your tank, you got to have a full tank to start with. You can't top off a half tank. You know, if you're half empty, there ain't no topping it off. That's when you're going to have to start taking big breaths. And the trick with our singing is we want to take the short, shallow breath and just top off at the end of each musical phrase. It'll keep you, number one, it's good for your voice. Number two, it'll keep you on pitch. When you start running short of air, you tend to go flat. And a lot of the callers that I see in caller schools, they sing very nice until they get to the last 2 or 3 words at the end of a phrase, and then they start losing air. They're running out of air, and their voice drops a pitch, and they go flat. So it'll help you both ways.
I'd like to add to what Tony was saying about the getting the moisture. The vocal folds are part of your breathing mechanism. As you are sitting there right now, your vocal folds are open. Okay? When we speak, they come together and they vibrate. But they have to stay supple and moist all the time. So how do they do that if they're part of the breathing mechanism? Well, they pull their moisture from your sinuses, from your mouth, all that. So it's important to keep those areas moist, because with the air, that's where the vocal folds are getting their moisture, so they can stay supple and flexible.
Another thing you can do vocally with singing calls, you can fade out vocally. You can use vocal inflections to change the pitch maybe, or slide up and down the scale with certain singing calls. You certainly can do some improvisation if you forget the words. And if I forget the words, I don't just stop. Sometimes I might sing. Boy, I'd sing the rest of this line if I remembered the words. You know, and the ones who aren't listening or just know that you sang something there, the ones that are listening wind up laughing, because it's like, and I knew there were words here if I just remember what they were, and then you go on to the next phrase that you remembered. And sometimes you have to improvise. There's other things that you can do if you forget words, is scat. Let's say you forget words, or maybe you want to do it on purpose, and you can do the scat style by vocally making noises that sound like an instrument of some sorts, or you know, you can do vocals like beep beep bop 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 ba-dam boo boom boo, or something along that line, that is nonsensical words, but it matched the music, especially if it's a jazz piece of anything. And so you can do that with some pieces of music. Oh, he's commenting without the microphone.
I'm sorry. I was asking Tony if he scatted, and he said no, he doesn't scat. And I have not scatted either. I tried it. I've done it just with a regular song, a little bit here and there, but I feel way out of my comfort zone doing a scat. I don't feel that one of my talents is musical improvisation. So I don't want to venture there very often. Is it all right if I talk about vibrato?
Absolutely.
I can't even say it, much less talk about it. Vibrato is a pulse that happens within the note that makes it sound more beautiful most of the time. If I'm just to sing a note, la, there is no vibrato in that. La. Could you hear the difference between the two? One of the things to remember about vibrato is you can't make vibrato with a tight neck and throat. It has to be relaxed in order to do that. So putting vibrato or practicing vibrato in your singing is going to help you relax so that there isn't all the stress and strain on those two tiny little pieces of meat that are laying in your neck. All right, and if something happens to them, by the way, they have no nerve endings, so there's no pain. If you injure your vocal folds, they will not hurt. You may have a dry throat or something of that nature, but the folds themselves have no nerve endings. And you can continue working because you're not sure what's wrong. Something's wrong, but you don't know what it is. So you continue to use them. It's like walking on a broken leg. You make it so much worse, and I can attest to that personally. So the vibrato is something that you can really use effectively. There's also something here in Tim's paper called a tremolo, and the tremolo is more what I imagine, I just have this picture in my head, of rather stocky older women in the choir, okay, that are singing, and instead of having the la, it's la. That's a tremolo. It's just an over-exaggerated vibrato. One of the things that I've done with the vibrato to enhance a particular singing call, one that I really love, is a song that was done by Joan Baez in the 60s, and she had a faster vibrato than what I normally have. So I worked on it to get the vibrato quicker for that particular song, so my voice sounds a little bit more like hers. And I've had a really good response from that. This is a song by Joan Baez, and it happens to be the night they drove Old Dixie down. And let me tell you, I can really sell that in the South. And even anywhere else, they enjoy it very much, but it really means a lot here in the South. So I wanted to use the vibrato in there just to put a little bit. I've heard Tanya Tucker describe her vibrato when she was young and first started singing as sounding like a billy goat. You know, it's that little sharper, faster vibrato. But you can change yours with a little bit of work.
You don't use vibrato in every singing call. Yes or no?
I really don't know how to answer that because I haven't listened to every note I've sang in a singing call. I'm not saying that that it's there for every single word, but probably at some point in time within the singing call there is vibrato.
Because I have an issue. You were calling it tremolo or whatever. I was a nice term. I call it church singing or opera singing. Because to me it doesn't lend itself when guys start singing it, or the girls when they do the upper part, and it's all to me, you know, if you're using it for a particular reason in a particular song, then it's a good thing. But if that's your natural manner of doing every song, then it's kind of like ice cream. You know, I like ice cream as much as the next guy, but if I had ice cream 3 times a day, 7 days a week, it wouldn't be very long until I got tired of ice cream. So I guess my point is that vocally we need to style. So, to me, some songs lend themselves to a vibratic type of singing. Other songs do not. Pink Cadillac with a vibrato would be weird to me. You know, Fisherman's Luck, if you could. it would be weird. Some song, the rhythm record "Summertime," I think would be a nice one for if someone had a very nice vibratic voice. And as it said in here, guys, if you guys don't have vibrato, is a great tool, and it's neat in the fact that you can learn it. If you don't have it, some people it occurs naturally, but if it doesn't occur naturally, you can learn it, and it is a great vocal tool. But again, I don't try to use vibrato every song. Or to me, it depends on the style of song as to how vibratic I'm going to be.
And you certainly don't use vibrato when you're working with the patter side of things.
No. Can I plug this in and just show the difference between would you be all right if I showed the difference between the quicker vibrato and just the normal way I would sing?
Deborah, if it reaches.
We got no music here. All right. Can it reach? Okay. Let's see. Well, I never use it.
Again, we have an equipment computer problem failure up here with. Yeah. Put it in the headphone jack.
All right. Let's see.
Wait.
Well, I've got music, but it's going to just settle itself down before it starts. It's not playing quite yet. It has to get in the mood. I know, it's frozen. See, I see the clock is right there. And it always does this for some reason. Okay, this is just regular voice. Circle left. Virgil Kane is my name, and I served on the Danville train. Okay, now I'll start it over again, and I'm going to add the faster vibrato. And I think, I may be kidding myself, but I think it sounds more Joan Baez-y. Circle left. Virgil Kane is my name, and I served on the Danville train. Can you hear the difference? A little bit. A few of you are kind of doing that. It just got a little bit, there's a little bit more vibrato in there. In the winter of '65, we were hungry, just barely alive. Do the tremolo with this thing? I don't ever do the tremolo. I don't like it. Virgil Kane is my name, and I served on the Danville train. What do you know? I can't do it
nice
at
hand.
all.
All right. That's what to do and what not to do.
All right. Thank you.
How would you guys like to have 3 ways to do the same singing call? Well, that's what she's got. But she didn't get that. It didn't just happen. Deborah's been working. She's worked with a vocal coach, I know, for a long time, and she really practices and really watches her song and thinks of these things. Who else would have thought to have changed the vibrato of your voice? For what most of us would be lucky if we could spell it or do it to be able to, but that's the kind of things. That's the kind of vocal techniques that you can learn, the neat thing is what that does is it separates you from being good and great. It all depends on where you want to be happy at.
So again, we're talking about the dynamic of how to attack or what the emotion is of these particular pieces of music that you're going to use. Great example of that. And there's other things where you have the shakes, or here's one. It's called raunchy, okay? Because that's this guttural scream that you want to do.
I've always heard that as graveling.
And graveling. You can talk gravelly in your voice.
Let's see. I'm trying to think of a song where I can. Not this one. Hush, 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 hush. I do have another singing call that I do a particular vocal thing to. I'll just do the very beginning of it, do the first verse, and I'll pretend that it's at the end, because I don't do it until the end. I save this particular vocal technique until the very end of the song. It's a storytelling song, and it's the same blasted song. I lied. Okay. Come on, kids. It's right there. Turn it down a little bit. Old Farmer Brown went out to gather eggs for him to fry, when all at once a rotten egg hit him in the eye. Walk around your corner, girl, and seesaw your own. Do an element and left, weave the ring you wrong. Back swing, that's not scatting. Ghost chickens in the sky. And that has gotten a really good response from the group. And I would not call it scatting.
No, it's mimicking.
It's clucking.
You are mimicking a chicken.
I'm mimicking a chicken. Okay,
and it's
thank
under
you.
mimic. Or animal sounds. Yep, that's right. Ghost chickens in the sky.
But I knew that I had really arrived when a Kansas chicken farmer came to me at a dance and told me that I really did sound like a chicken. I was so complimented by that. But graveling is putting that growl in your voice, you know, like do an element left. This sort of a thing. You're graveling.
Kenny Rogers doing what?
The sound that Kenny Rogers makes, is that groveling, whatever the hell you call it?
It's groveling, and he has a lot of vibrato too.
And he also has a kind of a breathy delivery.
Yes, he does.
Like a whiskey voice.
The song
That's a
Born
screamer.
in the USA is a rock tune, and it's kind of screaming. Because he's really screaming it. He's belting that. Born in the USA, I was definitely that.
Yeah. That's got gravel in it for sure. And that is vocally abusive, just for your consideration. You don't want to do that too often.
Let me just
if you listen at some of the rock and roll stars from the years past, Tim was talking about American Idol, and last year, what's his name from Aerosmith? Steven Tyler. You listen to Steven Tyler's voice now, and that's from 20 years of screaming. Well, I'm back. You know, and he can't do what he did 20 years ago. So that's what happens when you abuse your voice.
Absolutely. So this raunchy sound might, this is no song is selected. Isn't that a thing? Here we go. So here's a rhythm song, 299. Oh, I have no plug because you have the plug. You have the plug. So right here. So at any point, it's rather jazzy. Circle left. Well, it takes a lot of women to make romance so sweet.
Tell me about it, yeah.
It takes a lot of money, honey.
Sell it, honey.
So these are ideas of which if you're going to sing raunchy or a song, if it's I want me a sexy old lady, well then sing it that way. It's raunchy. That's it. No, that's the idea. That's a style. That's a technique. No, that's a technique.
Can I have the doodad back? I just want to show a piece of patter music that I've had great success with. You know where it goes. And it's not one that I use. I don't use any vibrato in it, I'll tell you that. Use a little bit more of just talking for it. You have the... Bow to the partner, and the corner too. 4 ladies chained like glockenspiels. Roll away, circle to the left, go around and say, 4 ladies roll away, circle left around that way. Element left with a corner man and a grand old run and a run a left grand. And that piece of music, it really gets a good response. It's called Hooked on Can-Can. And it's on an album that I have that's called Hooked on Classics. And I found that it is. It is. It's not my album. I just bought it. But if anybody wants to know where to get that music. No, it's not my album. But I've actually had the people do the can-can. When that stuff comes on, they love it. I mean, it's the use of the music, but I have to be vocally there to deliver it. And that's just a piece that gets good with it. It's not skillet licking, but...
How many of you heard the song Sweet Country Music, right? And there's a couple of versions of it out. Rhythm has one, Royal has one. One of the techniques used was at the very end to do a grand square a cappella. and you put the music down, and then you harmonize and try to come up with a vocal blend. And I think we should try to do that. Okay. Do you have this one? Your mic? Oh.
Here, you gonna play it?
Oh, I was going to do it.
I had one already with the vocals.
Well,
Oh.
I did one. You should do that.
Oh, you did it with vocals.
I did one with vocals.
Okay. So we have sweet country music. This is the chaperone. This is chaperone. Swing the girl in the blonde, singing sweet country music. Swing that good old mountain air. Right, but so you get the tonality of it. How we're going to get to the end and know where the end is.
I have to do harmony on this one.
Music, sides, face, grand, square, sweet country music. Breathe in that good old mountain air. Singing sweet country music makes me wish that I was there. How about that? So, there was a lot of different techniques we used in that. And that's the first time the three of us, I'd say, have ever done that together. All right, so we were both listening with ears what the other was going to do, and then we blended by pulling microphones down so that we could get a good sound between all of us. Again, you don't want the harmonies to over counter the melody, and you don't want the melody to be just way out there on a limb either, because it's all supportive. And then we had a nice chord at the end that we hit. And
Thank God to hit the last note. It's always a good thing.
And then we vocally enhanced it by putting some power to it. We gave it some shading. And that shading was volume. And we sang softly, to make me wish that I was there. And then we pulled away from it. We gave it its syllable, we gave it its accent, and then we pulled it away. And we did it vocally with some shading, what I call vocal shading, increasing or decreasing the volume as you're working together. Any others like that we could try?
We're just about out of time. I was going to ask if anyone had any questions or anything like that. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I think we have another 15 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were done on the hour. My error. My bad.
No worries.
Now, if you have nothing but time on your hands, and where's my plug? Where's my hole?
Did you get it work?
Earlier. Yeah, I had it working the other. Hang on a minute. I had to do this. Let's see if it's going to work. Damn it.
That made the tape.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. For those on the tape, I apologize. Maybe, well, let's see. Maybe it's going to recognize it. I can't get it to recognize my headphone. Okay. If you have a lot of time on your hands, you can do this yourself and put your own vocals on it. And then you can sing with your set, which is what I did. It'll come in. Let me get to the end. Come to the end.
This is Royal's Sweet Country Music.
But it doesn't have the vocals on it. But I put my own vocals on it.
Sweet country music.
Now more vocals.
Sweet country music. And breathing that good mountain air. Sweet country music.
Science, face, grand, square.
Sweet country music. Breathing that good old mountain air.
Now, that's good. There's no reason you can't do that yourself, and then you can sing with yourself. Paul Markham was the first person I ever saw do any of that, and so I've done that on several different tunes now that I put my own vocals on.
If it's all right, I have to ask. Yes, I do.
For the recording purposes, we have one mini jack going
Yes.
from computer to computer up here.
This is This is a song where I like to use an accent, and then I also, at a certain part in the song, go up into my head voice, which I very rarely ever use at a square dance. If I'm going to go up there, I'm going to go up there and get out of it really quick, because I don't want to see the men on the dance floor going like this with their hearing aids, because I've just all of a sudden hit something that their hearing aids are enhancing, so that sound is really, really piercing. So, here we go. Side space, grand square, oh, Danny boy. The pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. Okay, so you get the idea, all right? Did you hear a little bit of the accent in there? I hope. Okay. Now let's see if I can get it to the middle break. I'm going to have to stand for that because I need to take a nice, good breath. And whenever you're sitting down, I know we do so much of our practicing in the car, remember that your entire container is compromised because it's all squooshed like an accordion. And we want to have all this space in here, good posture, so I can take this big, deep breath. So, moved over. 'Tis you must go and I must abide. Side space, grand square. Oh, come ye back when summer's on the meadow and all the valleys hushed and white with the dew. Allemande and weave, it's I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Danny boy, I love you so. Now, there's a lot of different things I did in that to try to sell the emotion of it. You should have heard the I love you so. And that I actually had at the St. Patrick's Day dance, when I hit that high note, I had people applaud. And it's just something we don't do very often at a square dance. I don't have very many like this. But when I do, it has an impact that is really fierce. And also, my body language helps to sell that song. That's why I don't like to be standing behind a table. I like to be out in front, so all the wee ones can see me and what I'm doing while I'm singing Danny Boy.
She also did a hushed with do, and she used a sigh or a backup sound to make that happen, to make it sound. She was using onomatopoeia to make it sound like the word it was, hush or sigh.
Onomatopoeia?
Onomatopoeia.
Onomatopoeia.
That's a good word.
I'm going to say that all weekend long.
John, we have a mic. Can you take this? The question is, do we warm up the voice? And if so, what do we do? From John Jones from Arlington,
Texas. I know where he lives. Yes, we do warm up. There are a lot of things that we can do. One of the easiest ways to start warming up the voice is to do what's called yawn sighs. And that's opening the jaw like you would when you were going to yawn, and you go, and you're just letting the air come out. You'll actually yawn a little bit when you do it. It's some weird little trigger that happens for us. But I like to do that. That helps, especially when you first get up in the morning, so you don't step out of bed belting at your spouse or your significant other. Get out of bed and do a few yawn sighs first while you're waking up and get the voice a little bit warmed up. If you have been quiet all day at work, maybe you don't have a job where you'd use your voice a lot, and you go out to call a dance, you had doggone well be better warming up while you're setting up your equipment, or shortly before the dancers come in, do a few vocal exercises. Another one you can do is to do Mary Had a Little Lamb with a lip buzz. I wouldn't advise that you do that where people can see you. I'll show you what it looks like, and you will realize why you don't want to do that where people can see you. All right? So, we go. That helps me also to maintain the breath delivery. Hold on to the breath, make sure it's supported. Of course, I was sitting, so it wasn't as properly supported as it should have been. That's a couple of the things that I do. What do you do, Tim?
Yeah, I definitely am not going to do Danny Boy the first tip. So I'm going to warm up to it. But that's another way of warming up. I mean, we laugh, but I'm not going to do Cowboy from the right out of the gate. I'm going to work my way up, nice and patter, something delivery, vocally. The singing call is going to be some style of vocal that's going to be kind of relaxed, so I can kind of warm myself up along with it. And then later on, 2-3 tips in, maybe I'll start in on, hey, I'm going to do this one that I know that I've got to really get that note up there and hit it. So
I'm one of those weird ones you see in the car, driving with the windows up, singing. I sing with the radio. And in the car, I don't sing real loud, so I don't push my voice. So that by the time I get to where I'm going, my voice is usually pretty well warmed up. But I do my best, some of my best singing in the car. So that's probably the most warming up that I do.
Yep.
Have you ever driven along and seen somebody singing along in the car? Do you ever try to find the radio station they're singing along to? Try to read their words.
Another thing is just try to be relaxed. You have to keep your hands relaxed, because that all of those little hand things, if you're grasping your microphone with a death grip, all of that is tensing your vocal folds up. So you have to shake those hands out and get them loose and alternate hands, which hand you're holding the mic with, because oddly enough, that will affect your vocal folds and the tension in your sound and the voice. It really does.
I have Calder shoulder right now from holding the microphone in my right hand. Had to go to an orthopedic surgeon 2 weeks ago. All because of the way I hold my microphone. The other thing I was going to say, I drink a ton of water at a dance. I used to drink coffee because I thought drinking warm stuff would help me good. And one of Arlen Hopkins early on advised against drinking coffee because of the caffeine. If you drink coffee, drink decaf. I don't care for decaf. And he also said not to drink either decaf or regular with either sugar or cream in it. And if you're going to drink something, the best thing that you drink would be room temperature water. So I generally go through, and I'm a water snob. I go through one of the big Aquafina bottles at any given dance. I'll go through at least one. I carry two, and I'll go through at least one in a 2.5-hour dance.
How many of you all have singing calls that have key changes at the end? Well, we do. We have them on occasion, right? We use them. We also know, because we've called with a lot of callers, that you don't know where that note is, and you tend to slide to hit that last note. So it's like, 4 boys promenade inside around that ring. And so that's a technique, oddly enough. It's called sliding. You slid up to the note. You didn't know where it was.
Most callers use, instead of, they use the word well.
Well, 4 boys promenade.
You watch the next time you work with the caller, the number of times that he starts off any given sequence in any singing call, even in the patter, with the term well. And it's used as strictly to get on pitch.
It has done that a lot. And sometimes, if you know what it is, you can attack that note. But here's just a quick example of talking that I like to use. That is, and this talking sometimes is just as effective as singing, and when to do that. And this is one that I talk, Donna's favorite singing call. Circle to the left. Some say love, it is a river, and that it drowns the tender reeds. Do an alum and I left that corner, and I came in later to start singing. But the idea of talking it gave it that emphasis. It was totally different, and it put that chill up the spine. It was like, wow, I believe that, because I felt that in what he was saying. So you can sometimes use just talking things or silence, which is golden at this moment. Look, do we have any other further questions? Because we're about ready to wrap up. You want to get this handout? It's available. It's on the CD. It's one of those. I want to be sure to thank the panelists here, both Deborah and Tony, for their time to be here. And we hope you're going to take this and read up on it and start utilizing some of these things.
One of the most important vocal techniques that you can possibly do is to put a smile on your face. If you have a smile on your face, it's going to come into your voice. Even if you're not feeling it, if those muscles are engaged in a smile, your voice comes off that way. So when you're up there, you're primary vocal technique is a smile, something these guys always have on their faces. How about a nice hand for Tim Marriner?
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here, guys. Have a good rest of your convention.